Hey, I'm back with a video mainly because I wanted to talk a little bit about what the last season of League of Legends actually meant for the competitive scene and what were like the major things that I identified during Worlds because I was rather silent when it comes to like that moment, I gotta admit. So I kind of felt bad in just skipping the Worlds entirely, so I made a little bit of an overview on the things that at least I witnessed that enabled DRX to win the entire tournament. And the obvious response that everybody will probably have pointed out already is the insane amount of individual talent in that team. Um, some better than the others, which is fair, and it is really important for you to have that in order to win worlds, no matter what the case may be. But DRX also had really interesting games that one was really in favor for them because certain champions in the meta were really strong to the point that this type of play was enabled really well. And the second being that they still were the best at doing it because just because your team's like champions are well enabled for it doesn't necessarily mean that they're really good at the execution part as well. But they excelled at both, so that is the reason why they won. So how did the RX win? They won majority of their games, as you could see from the statistics and the champions they favored. A lot of their compositions were relatively formulaic. So what was formulaic about it? They had one thing in mind when it came to picking their bot lane. It was bot push all the time, can always be controlled, and through extreme force if necessary. So, like, what is a champion that we immediately think of when we think of DRX and a champion that gives them bot play? It's easy. Caitlyn, Ash for Deft. Caitlyn was picked quite often, and it was one of the biggest like cards at Worlds. And then, of course, Barrel's Heimerdinger. So, how did they use this play? And the initial part is actually relatively a simple concept. So if Kyoshik is really preferring to play champions like Kindred and Graves, all you technically need to do in order to ensure that these champions get ahead is if they get equal amount of farm and EXP, if not more than the champion than the on the other side. Typically, if you have Kindred or Graves, and then you're usually playing this matchup, and then if you're equal in terms of the enemy in terms of EXP and then gold, you're winning the game already. Or sometimes you'll even play even far more aggressive and then try to play for jungle invades, which in certain champion matchups like it can be done because the thing that was really good about that Korea always did was they always like snowballing the game from bot lane. Because if you get entry into the river through this way and then even drop a pink in dot, then you're enabled to do something that is really annoying for the mid laner. So if you're playing mid lane and let's say that the blue side in this case, whoever they may be, was daft enough that when the Syndra or like there were telltales of support disappearing after the bot lane has been pushed, and they're assuming that the river has been taken, then the immediate response that they'll have is either they'll match the vision if they can. We don't know if a jungler has a pink during this time or could have afforded one, but let's say that he does, or just releases a green ward in here, or even tries to look there for even like a deeper one. Reasonable. Then even then, you run into the problem that certain like that they're gonna have to be forced to lean here. And the conundrum there was that when support based for a little bit, and if they were able to do this at a right time where mid lane wave was being contested, even here, when you see, like, even by the time that you see it, you're forced to often give up control. Just because the fact that they have usually most likely have like an additional member, and then there's this one whole side of the map that you don't know. So if the jungler is here as well, and you try to take this fight, you know for a fact that your support is late, and then even if your jungler is here, and if you take a wrong fight, then it's instantly a 2v3 disadvantage. Simple, right? Then there's always that case of the support being here, which is even more difficult because then you don't even know where they are. Most support players would take this route just to like under the assumption that this side is not warded, but it's a silly assumption. Most of the times it is, especially if you're playing at a high level. So that cheese doesn't really work anymore. But it was this utilization of this pink that like got them really ahead. And this is in support of what type of champions Azeka like playing, right? One of his best two were two of his best champions, Silas and then Akali, right? Champions that are, if enabled to do so, can trade really aggressively in the earlier stages as well. Get the both champions to equally low critical HP, and then if there's more people there, then they're able to answer the wave faster. So yada yada. So then all these stars seems to be aligning for them. And then last thing that was really interesting that they specifically did was revolving just around Heimer or champions that had insane high burst damage. So this is quite often a frequent thing that happens when in games where like Joker picks, like Heimer is picked, that instantly give you push advantage, and then you use that push advantage for certain things. So let's say that this bot push happened, and then they got pinned. AD resets after, so support is about 30 seconds to like 15 seconds faster. So they're either here or here, somewhere around here, and then they get this notification from the bot lane, so they know that this entire vision has been taken, and then they slow stack this wave 1.5 like 1.5 away maybe, and then crash it back. And then during this time, they together push the wave, and then they contest this pink board, like pink brush. And in a lot of scenarios, like this support is really in big trouble. If it's like Lulu, if it's like Karma, any long range champions that require like that have insane laning presence in certain right hands, or like certain right pairings, like Aphelios Lulu, for example, or even Nami for Lucian Nami, they also utilize that way of well for push in other teams at least. Then this support's in a lot of trouble because chances are the midland wave is like they're going to be playing this way more aggressively. So if you know that the AD has to come back and catch this wave, then you have to call the bluff, and this is when you have to give up control only to gain it again. And then you just use that wave, like you just use that timing better and better, and that's the way that you play the game. But you really couldn't do that with Heimer too much, because if the AD was taking this route down instead of this one, like they should, and they're actually able to participate in this fight, even if you get Heimer, there's a high chance that you're not running away from this, because one or even two potentially could be really critically low, especially after level 6, and then all of a sudden you're playing the rules of the game. However, they just, with the specific champion advantage, they just like to put a brake pedal to it. So that was one of the reasons why Heimer was really terrifying, and Beryl knew that really well. So that is, again, it all loops back to like the 3 points, all loops back to together of application of the entire idea towards one specific goal, and then them just playing recklessly around it, or not recklessly, but like just continuously. And looking at a little bit more future oriented, how does this actually affect season 12, or like what are some of the things that could potentially stay, and what are some of the things that may be a little bit different? So I think the thing that may stay ever relevant is that it's still a bot lane meta from the way that I see it. Caitlyn is one of the most played champions. Lucian is still one of the most played champions. Granted, they're like quite good in solo queue as well, but the counter argument of Zeri is also fair, but I really don't know too much about that. But the idea being that Jhin is very popular, Caitlyn is very popular, and Lucian's still very popular with Lucian Nami. So in that case, then bot push is still a prevalent thing in the current state of the meta. And then this maneuver will then continuously be repeated because obviously DRX is an LCK team. So if any team around the world research them to hell is LCK teams. So this formula will either be replicated or be advanced upon. I don't know how it could potentially be advanced. So like I'll probably be looking out for that. And that is most likely the thing that I expect is going to be really important as well, because Herald is now going to be higher value because turret plates are a little bit more expensive. It is 125 gold, but that's a whole minute worth of time typically in League of Legends for you to accumulate that much gold without like leeching extreme amount of resources away from your enemy, from your own team. So that's going to be it for me for now. So thanks for watching.